Welcome to the Nick Blevins Family Ministry Podcast. Our goal is to help you maximize your church's potential. You'll hear from top leaders in children's, student, and family ministry about the principles and practices they use. Now here's your host, Nick Blevins.
Hello and welcome to episode 10 of the podcast. Today I talk with Kristen Ivy. Kristen is the executive director of messaging at Orange, and she's also the leader of the Phase Project, which is a huge project that Orange has been working on and unrolling and sharing with churches and leaders to help leaders and parents connect with kids at every phase of their life and understand what they're going through, what questions they're asking, and how best to serve and lead them. So I'm excited for that interview. And as you'll hear, when we recorded this, Kristen was in Panama City Beach for Big Stuff Camp. Tough, I know. And actually, as you hear this, if you listen to this podcast when it comes out, the week that it airs, I'm there as well with our high school team. You'll hear me talk about it's our first trip there. So I'll be down there roughing it in the sunny, nice weather in the beach. And so if you're not, it's okay to be jealous. Or if you're listening to this sometime in the future and it's cold, it's okay. It's fine to be jealous. That's fine. But we have a good conversation just about Phase and all the things they're working on, what they've learned. And the question that I think most leaders ask as it relates to this project, which is, how do I use it in my church? How do I share it with our parents and get it in their hands? And what do they need the most to help them as parents? So I think you'll love this interview. There's a lot of links and resources and things like that we talk about that you can get. And all of that is in the show notes at nickblevins.com/episode 10. But let's go ahead and jump into the interview with Kristen Ivy. Well, it's an honor to have Kristen Ivy on the podcast. Welcome, Kristen.
Hi, Nick. It's good to be here.
Well, tell us a little bit about yourself and your family and what you do at Orange.
Well, I'm the mother of 3 kids. I'm married to Matt now for 12 years, and we have Sawyer, who's 7 years old, and Hensley is 4.5. I'm still waiting for what year she's going to decide. She doesn't want to inform us that she's half a year older than it sounds like she is.
16, 15,
yeah.
20. Well, until old is not a good thing.
Yeah, you can't. Right now, if I say she's 4, I get corrected every time.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
But then our youngest is about to turn 1. Raleigh is 11 months and just started walking last week. And so we're getting ready to have a first birthday. And that's pretty exciting. And then I've worked for Orange now for a little over 10 years. So I was kind of there at the very beginning. Anybody who went to the first Orange conference, I feel like that was kind of a picture of the beginning of Orange. We've kind of come a long way, but
I was there at the first one.
There you go.
A different building, you know?
Yep. Yeah, that was the last time we were in that building.
Oh yeah, first and last. That's good.
But before working at Orange, I was teaching high school, and I left teaching high school to go get my Master's of Divinity, go to seminary. While I did that, Reggie was still working at North Point on staff, and kind of in my transition, I was having conversations with him about what we could do for church leaders of all kinds of churches. And so jumped on board with Orange just a little bit before it was called Orange. And it's just been a really, really fun journey for the last 10 years, watching things grow and change and watching churches try new things to connect with parents, trying new strategies to really reach the next generation, reach their community. And the most exciting part of it, I think, is just watching what leaders have been doing over the last decade to really make an impact and change things in their approach, and just hearing the stories.
Yeah, I'm sure the 10 years has gone by fast. At least it feels like it has for me, even though it don't work for Orange, but just the last 10 years, if I think about it. It's almost 10 years since the first Orange, right? I guess that'll be next year, Orange Conference.
It was this last year. It was this last year. Our 10th conference.
Yeah, and it has gone by fast. I'll say one thing for sure. I don't think I've mentioned this to you, but our daughter, Mackenzie, was born just like 2 months after Raleigh, and it's really funny. Wow. Yeah, and she's our second, so this, in some ways, it's not new. But, they grow up so fast, and they change so fast, and you see it more, obviously, when they're young. But I was always reminded of it because you would post, like, the 4-month picture of Raleigh or something, and Mackenzie would be too. And I remember joking, like, hey, look, she has a neck. Mackenzie's going to have a neck in, like, 2 months. Like too much, she'll have
funny.
a neck. Yeah, she does it
That's too
now.
funny.
Yeah, it's
I
just
don't know. With
crazy.
our second child, Nick, I learned about everything that I didn't know about as a parent. I think with our first, I was figuring it out and I thought, okay, now I've got this parenting thing down. And then we had our second, and all of a sudden I thought, everything I learned the first time doesn't work anymore.
Yeah, they're so unique and different. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
true. And this is not always true, but a lot of times too, as they get older, and of course
Hmm.
your kids are still young, but sometimes I certainly observe with other families and my family, everything. When a lot of times the oldest, they're all unique anyway,
Yeah.
but there's just so much difference sometimes between the oldest and the second, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, and ours follow that typical, first child, second child, and, if you birth order stuff. So, I mean, he's,
Yep.
Follow the rules, play to the adults. I mean, he'll try to manipulate us like
Yeah.
crazy, but he's not going to just outright defy us. And then my daughter, who's the second, she's got all the fire, so she just came out with,
That's
with
awesome.
a lot more challenge.
Yeah, I could see that, but we'll see. It's
Yeah.
early for Mackenzie. She's still got a couple months before she's one. We'll find out. So right now you're at Panama City Beach for big stuff.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yep. We're down here having some Orange meetings down here for big stuff, leader training. So,
And big stuff's like a student ministry. A conference is the right word, but how would you describe it?
Yeah, student camp.
Yeah, that's cool. I mean, our team, we're actually for the first time ever taking some of our high schoolers there. So about the time this posts, so we're recording it a lot earlier, but when it posts, we'll probably be there around that time. And I'm looking forward to that. I'm excited about that.
That's great. We're excited to see you down here.
Yeah, and I'm sure it's hard working on the beach, but like you said, it's not like you spend all that kind of time on the beach having fun. You just see it.
It's a really great backdrop.
Yeah, nice. Well, hopefully you get some good time in there. But today we definitely want to talk about Phase. And so anybody that has heard about the Phase project, they know what we're going to talk about. But for anyone who hasn't, could you just give us an overview of what Phase is, how it got started, where it is kind of right now?
Sure. So in this journey at Orange, oftentimes we would find that the questions would come up about why we do things the way that we do them. And there was something about our team, because so many of us have been educators and teachers and counselors and things, that we just kind of had this this common belief and things that gave us positions for why we would do things the way we would do them. But we hadn't had any formal way to explain it. And so I think that's where, for us, the beginning of Phase started. But it's been a journey for about the last 3 or 4 years now. I guess it's been about 4 years, where we were kind of bringing our team around a table and saying, okay, let's talk about why we do things the way we do them. What is at the root of what we want to accomplish? And we said, we want every kid to have a better future, but a lot of it came back to, we want to care about the holistic needs of a child. Yes, we want them to have a better relationship with Jesus Christ, because we think that their faith in Jesus will transform every area of their life. But at the same time, we don't think that just getting them Jesus will fix or everything in their life. And so how can we care about the whole child? We care about their education. We care about their health. We care about, their emotional and social needs. And so we want to package faith in such a way that we're also, cognizant or smart about everything that's going on in their life. So that was a lot of the Phase initiative. And as we've moved into it, we've had a lot of conversations with educators. We've interviewed 250 state teachers of the year. We've also had focus groups of educators in our area, trying to learn everything that we can about kids at every phase of life. We talked with counselors as well, who work in family counseling, crisis counseling with younger children, teenagers, and we've been reading on child development, all of this to kind of surface everything that we can about kids and teenagers. I think our latest group that we've been meeting with has been a group of pediatricians, which is an interesting conversation as well as a part of this. But all of it boils down to this one idea that we would say a phase is a time frame in a kid's life where you can leverage distinctive opportunities to influence their future. And every phase of a kid's life is different. So Nick, I mean, you'd see this in your own kids' lives, you think you get to know them at one phase, and then all of a sudden something changes. And, what used to be true isn't true anymore. And they're moving from one phase to another because kids grow up really fast.
Yeah, right about the time that you perfected it. Not that you ever perfect it, but like, I figured it out. It's working. It's great.
Right.
Too late. It's time for the next one, right? You get like a month. Like,
that's
that was a good month.
And it moves fast, especially in that first year.
Yeah.
Anybody who has a new baby, you're trying to figure out their schedule. When do they want to nap? When do they want to eat? What are their signs and their cues? And I remember with my son, the first time through it, you're thinking, okay, we just hit a rhythm. Now I know when he's tired and when we're going to do our naps and then he goes through some growth spurt and it all shifts and it all changes and we're trying to get to the next thing. So about every couple months in there, it feels like that pattern changes. And then as they get older, we're saying, you know what, that window changes. You have to rediscover a kid at every phase. What's happening? We've said kids are changing in 6 ways at every phase. So in the phase project, we talk about how they're changing physically, how they're changing mentally, how they're changing relationally, culturally, emotionally, and morally at every phase.
That's good. That's a good framework to think about. And you guys are doing stuff even within each of those 6 ways to help people understand it.
Yeah, I think that part of the phase initiative has been an exercise in empathy, really, when it gets right down to it. To say, if you could understand for just a minute, if you kind of like step back and you pause everything else that's going on in the adult world, because I know my world is really busy as a working mom with 3 kids. I mean, I have a lot of things that are going, not to mention, all of us have, you've got your own parents, you've got your own family issues going on. You got all these plates spinning. But sometimes it's just that moment when you pause and reimagine for a second what it would be like to be 4 in this moment. And sometimes kids are savvy and smart and they'll just straight tell you. I had one yesterday where I was trying to get my daughter to stop throwing a fit. So she's 4.5.
Yeah, those
and
are
she's
fun.
just, she wanted Tinkerbell glasses. And, I was like, we're having kind of a needs and wants conversation.
Yeah,
about,
I need it. That's what my son would say.
We don't need these Tinkerbell glasses. So, but she's just melting down and throwing a fit. And she looks at me and says, as I'm trying to get her to calm down, Mama, I'm still listening to you, but I don't know how to not cry when I feel this sad.
Oh, that's cute and very insightful. She's very aware of her feelings.
You're very articulate in this moment. I get it. But the amount of crying you're doing is completely irrational.
Yeah.
But sometimes our kids tell us things, but sometimes I think they don't tell us what's going on the inside and what they're feeling. And, when you start to look at the brain changes, for example, of what's happening in a 10 or 11-year-old, and you pause to consider all the changes that their body's going through, all the things that they're going through mentally, all the things and stresses that are on them culturally as they've shifted into middle school. It just gives us a different kind of lens to understand how to show up, how to be present for a kid, how to meet some of their root needs, and really how to fight for a relationship in a different way.
Yeah, I think I like what you said about it. Just it's kind of been a lesson in empathy, because no matter how hard we try, I don't know, maybe some people could, but my feeling is no matter how hard we try, we really can't understand how they feel just through instinct. And we certainly usually can't remember. I mean, even if you're talking about a 10-year-old, do you really remember what you felt as a 10? Maybe when you get older, teenage years, maybe we can remember that. But so many of those early years, you really just can't remember. And so that's why I like what you all are doing, because it gives handles and some specifics, really helps relate. And then, like we talked about before, you can know it before you get into that phase versus having learned it the hard way with just a few months left before they're in the next phase. That's a real good thing. Yeah, you hit on a couple of things there. It was interesting this last year. I was having a conversation with Reggie Joyner about what you were just saying about the remember, how you remember it.
and how that changes. And literally that you can't remember preschool because nobody does. You know, I mean, you just don't have memories of what that's like. And so to relate to a preschooler, you have to imagine it and you have to interact with them if you're going to, you know, really try to get into their world and their space, because you can't operate out of memory. In elementary school, it's hard to remember. You know, it's really hard to remember what it was like in the second grade. So again, you really need to imagine it. You need to interact. In middle school, it's just scary to remember.
Yeah, that's true. You only remember the bad things. There's nothing good.
In all honesty, we've all blocked it to an extent. I mean, if you go back in mind to seventh grade, there's something in most of us that just goes, I'd rather not.
Yeah, let's just skip that one.
That. And then high school, the tricky part there for anybody in high school ministry or parents of high schoolers is that we actually can remember it. And there's a lot of research that would suggest that it's some of our most powerful memories come from the high school years. So we remember it, and we remember it pretty well. But that's what it was like for us as high schoolers. You know, for me, that was, like in 97.
Like 7 years ago. I'm just kidding. Yeah.
So,
well, that's, I was in high school in 97, but on the tail end. So it's a long time ago, and the world was quite different.
Yeah, I didn't have a cell phone, let alone, a smartphone. There was no internet in my pocket. There was I was just getting my first email address. And you fast forward to high school now, and Snapchat and, dating apps. And goodness knows all the changes. Yes, it still has a lot of the same qualities to it, but there's also a lot that's changed, a lot that's different. And so a lot of times as adults, our temptation is to interact with high schoolers based on our memory because we do remember it so well. And the risk there is that we can kind of superimpose on them an experience that they're not having.
Yeah.
So,
and you probably, the other thing too is how self-aware were we in high school? So you know what I mean? So you remember things that happened, but do you remember exactly how it should have been, or how you should have handled it, how it should have felt, or what you know what I mean?
Oh, that's very funny. That's so true. There's a lot of times I'd laugh because I lead small groups and work with leaders who lead small groups. And I'm thinking, if I think back to how mature I was in the ninth grade, I'm less surprised at what I see ninth graders doing. So there is an element of that too. I think we have to be self-aware enough to go, hey.
Yep. And it's a balance because you don't want to be, you don't put too high of an expectation. That's crazy. You don't want to, I don't know. Sometimes parents will tell just the crazy stories of how they were in high school, and you got to watch that too, because you're not trying to go too far. Like, oh yeah, this is okay.
Right.
As long as you don't do it as bad as I did. You know what I mean? It's tough.
That's the essence of parenting, right? Just be a little better than I was.
Yeah, exactly. Like,
just turn out a little better than me and we're good.
Yeah, if you don't say that, but sometimes I don't know any parent that says that, but a lot of times they do it in a different way, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Like they're proud of you when you didn't just, do that crazy thing. So you have created sort of like a phase, there are different phases, right, that are pretty specific, but then there's also the broad. So I'd love to real quick cover preschool, elementary, middle school, high school, and just touch on that for anyone that isn't aware of it. And you can go to justaphase.com as well, and we'll put some links in the show notes where people can see this played out. But describe that for us, like how you broke it down, and then even how you broke it down further to real specific phases.
Sure. So after having a lot of these meetings and talking with leaders, we broke down where we felt like the major shifts were happening in a kid's life as they grew up. And so we came up with, I think, 13 phases. Really, the first year of life, you could break into a couple phases on its own, but we put that all together in one. So from 0 to 1, the first year of life. And then we have another phase when a kid is 1 and 2 years old. And there's so much research behind the first 3 years of life in that critical window. But when a kid is 1 and 2, I'm more and more convinced than ever that those years matter in a bigger way than most of us anticipate. But we could get into that at some point. But the next phase is when they're 3 and 4, the typical preschool years. So the first time that a parent is usually maybe dropping them off at a school, maybe out into the world, or they're interacting and having a lot more play dates, a lot more stuff going on. Then you enter the elementary school phase. So those first 3 phases are all preschool. The next ones would be kindergarten and first grade as one phase, second and third grade as a phase. If you talk to elementary school teachers, won't take you very long to figure out that there's a whole big group of people that'll say the golden years of childhood are right there in the second and third grade, when kids are, able to do a lot of stuff on their own, and yet they haven't quite entered any of the hormonal changes that are coming in the phases ahead. And so it's just a sweet spot, but it passes fast. It's just about 2 years.
Yeah.
Then you've got fourth and fifth grade, where everybody knows that something's changing, but it's not obvious yet. And so it's kind of this years that if you're in a church that has usually a little bit larger size church, you may notice it a little bit more, only because you're dealing with more kids. But a lot of times you'll begin to notice, hey, our fourth and fifth graders don't seem to resonate quite with the rest of elementary school. We don't even know what to do with them. And we hear a lot of those conversations as we travel and talk to churches at Orange. And so we're really diving into fourth and fifth grade in some new ways because of the research and everything we're finding out. But they are in elementary school, and yet they're different. So what does that mean, fourth and fifth grade? And then you jump to middle school. We put sixth grade on its own as a phase. And sometimes my joke was, with some sixth graders, you could just go read all the materials for fourth and fifth grade and it would work. And with other sixth graders, you could go read all the materials for seventh and eighth grade and it would work.
Yeah.
Because there's such a gap in that year between developmentally where kids fall. But sixth grade is its own thing. And seventh and eighth grade is a phase. And that finishes middle school. And then in high school, we've separated out actually each one of those years. So ninth grade, 10th grade, 11th grade, and 12th grade as distinctive phases in a kid's life. And those 4 years pass really, really fast, faster than you can imagine. I hear that over and over and over again from parents, from leaders, having led small groups. It's those 4 years seemed like an eternity when you were in high school, but when you are watching a high schooler go through it, it just goes quick.
I bet. And some of it is you're more aware that there's less time left before they're they're going to move out, versus if it goes fast at 2, it's still fast, right? But you're not thinking about, oh wow, 2 years left, 1 year left. You know what I mean? So what led you to create those phases? Was it just the research kind of helped? I mean, some of them just seem obvious, right? Sixth grade being its own, even high school individually. Yeah. So is it pretty clear, or did you have to debate that one pretty hard?
We debated some, sure. I mean, there's probably nothing we don't do that we're pushing and debating. But part of it felt pretty obvious. And again, there was an element of we need to explain why we do things the way we do them. And so we would get in a room and go, we've split out small groups this way, but why? And then we go look at the research, or we talk to educators, or we talk to counselors, and some of the things really just reinforced what we already kind of instinctively knew. I think there's a lot of things like that about phase, where it was like, you could go, oh yeah, we already do it that way, or we're already naturally, interacting with kids this way. But now I think it's creating a language too for some of us to say here's why, here's why we approach teaching the Bible the way that we do in the preschool years. And I don't know. So yeah, I think a lot of it was intuitive. And then it just was kind of reinforced.
Yeah, and probably intuitive too, as parents, church leaders, educators, working with kids over time, because that helps when you see, I know you all talked about this, and I think it's really powerful, the idea that parents can be experts in their own kids at their kids' phase, but as church leaders, educators, anybody's working with multiple groups, like groups of kids, and sees over multiple years, they have a different perspective too, because they can see it from year to year in larger groups. And like both perspectives are valuable. Right.
Yeah, that's part of why I think it takes all of us to influence a kid or teenager. In the best case scenario, a kid will grow up with loving parents, or with, a loving guardian, loving grandparent, whoever it is that knows them best. And so in the best case scenarios, they have that at home and that support structure, but that they also have a community of faith around them with leaders who are engaging with, them and their peers and reinforcing the same thing. And so that's really what we've been fighting for from the beginning, to say every kid needs a stronger, home force and faith community. And when those two things partner and those two things are on the same page, that's the best win for a kid.
Yeah, another thing I love about Phase is, as someone who's a pastor at a church leading family ministry, we're always trying to partner with parents and trying to engage parents. And as we all know, as parents, we're so busy. There's so many things. But something that draws a parent in is phase. Like when you can tell me what my child is experiencing, thinking, feeling at the phase they're in, that's really helpful. And that's why I think some of our transition events, like coming into kindergarten, things like that, they get the best traction because parents are in transition. There's uncertainty. They'd love some help. You know what I mean? They're trying to ease it as best they can.
Right.
So when we offer those, it's easy. Parents line up for that. It's just harder other times, but phase would allow us to do that all the time.
Yeah. Well, part of what we're saying is we miss it as parents because we don't realize that your kid is moving from phase to phase. So, I guess it was part of this came out of the book when we did Playing for Keeps, and we talked about the marble jar, which I know can be kind of, if you heard it, a little bit of a depressing illustration. But for just a second, to kind of go back to that, we say every parent, you have about 936 weeks with your kid from the day they're born until the day they graduate. And so we challenge parents to put together a marble jar. I have 3 in my own home, where we put 936 marbles when your kid is born, and you remove a marble each week. And so I guess the depressing side of that is you're watching your time with your kid kind of diminish visually.
Yep.
But it comes from a scripture where we say, it's Moses said, teach us to number our days that we may gain a heart of wisdom. And when you look at how much time you have left, when you actually visualize it, it's just this exercise to say, hey, actually, it doesn't have to catch you by surprise. You don't have to all of a sudden turn around tomorrow and be shocked, that you only have this many weeks left with your kid. You already know the number. And so count it out and visualize it as a reminder that these moments matter more than you think, but also that you have collective potential in your kid's life. You don't have to get it all done in a day. You don't have to get it all done in a week. But you have this collection of weeks. And as church leaders, I actually think the practice can matter as well, because we all have this tendency to think we have to make every week count in the life of a kid, which we should. We should do that. We should go, this one week, if we only have this week, we want to make it matter in the life of a kid. And we do, because the weeks matter more than we think. But at the same time, if we think collectively about the 936, we also understand that there's collective potential. And so the best thing you can do with a kid who has, for example, I'm looking at, 780 weeks left. So they're in preschool ministry. They're a 3-year-old, and they have 780 weeks left. Your best moment with that 3-year-old is probably not to talk about the beast of Revelation and make sure that they understand everything about the end of times and, crystallize, whether they're,
so they have nightmares. You had to give them nightmares for the next few years.
Well, there's a collective potential here. There's a story that's building. And right now you're in a phase of laying the foundation. And the thing that matters most is that you lay that foundation, that you give them an imprint of trust so that they'll be set up to trust in a Heavenly Father who loves them and takes care of them and meets their needs. So the way you meet the needs of a preschooler in that preschool phase, the way that you meet their physical needs, you're laying a foundation of trust. And so every story you tell, every interaction that you have, every song that you sing, you begin to take through a different kind of lens when you understand that phase, because you know that in the collective potential, you have a specific role. And that when the next person comes along and they're viewing that collective momentum, they know their specific role. And there's a build to this. And we're being faithful with the phase that we're given, knowing that there are phases that came before us and there's phases coming after us. And also trusting, that I think this all the time. Again, that pressure we feel to make every moment count or make every week matter can lead us to want to go, I want to make it matters so much. But there's a fear connected to that as a church leader that I think is rooted in insecurity. And maybe I'm just naming something on my own. I don't know if you've ever felt this, but you want to go, if I have a group of girls at student camp, I want to make sure that they all trust in Jesus before we go home.
Yeah, that's,
I want to make sure
you
that
do. Yeah, but that's dangerous, right? I mean, you can
but there's
push
a
kids
danger
away.
to it to go, well, it's not even just that. It's like, is that coming because I want to know for me that it's taken care of? Or
Yeah.
can I open-handedly say, I want to be the best steward of God's love and grace and forgiveness in their life and introduce them to an ongoing relationship? And if they don't commit something in front of me out loud to me in this moment, I have to still trust as a leader that God is at work in their life, the Holy Spirit's at work in their life, outside of this camp and beyond this one experience and beyond this 1 week. I'm going to be a good steward of this week in this moment to the best of my ability, and to continue to pray for this kid, but knowing that God is at work in their life for the many weeks to come, if that makes sense. And so it's not necessarily about having to make something happen in this week through me, as it is using this week to meet their needs where they are today, to move them one more step in their journey, and to, pray that God is going to continue to use that over time to move them into relationship with Him.
Yeah, that's good. I think the marble jar, and we have that too, and we give those out at baby dedication and talk about that, with parents in our church. But a lot of times, like I remember one time I posted about it on Facebook just for any parent to see, and talked about the Legacy app, which people can go to the App Store and download that, and you put in your kids' birthdays, and then whenever you go into it, it tells you how many weeks you have left. It's basically like a digital, marble jar. And like one of my friends, her first comment was like, "No, I can't do that. There's no way." It's just too hard, too sad. And I get that, totally get that. But that's one of those things where ignorance really isn't bliss, right?
Right.
And yeah, it is hard, no doubt. And every time you move a marble, that's hard. But it'd be a lot harder, to be near the end in terms of high school when they're going to move out and not have taken advantage of that, right? And really been intentional about it. That's what I love about how you all talk about it too. It's when you see that, you get more intentional about what you're doing. And not necessarily every single week, every single day is amazing, but you're thinking long-term and you're being proactive each day.
Right. It is a proactive plan. We've had over the last year, one of the things that we've done is taken critical issues that every parent will feel in their kid's life. So you take sexual integrity, for example, or technological responsibility, some of those key issues. There tends to be a panic attached to that as a parent.
Sure.
You're like, I just don't want to make them to make dumb decisions really on those issues. But spread it out over the 936, over this timeline, to say, if you anticipate what's coming in those areas, you can craft your response and you can begin a dialogue in the preschool years that will continue in the elementary school years, that will set you up for the middle school years, so that you can have the kind of conversations you're hoping for in the high school years. When you're proactive, I think I'm jumping off of that idea of being proactive, and these life maps is kind of what we're calling them, but these life maps are a way of saying, here's how you can be a little bit proactive and anticipate what's coming on these critical issues, so that you're not jumping in, at ninth grade and something happens and you're in a panic and you're like, oh, we should have a talk. We're kind of going,
yeah,
all right. And that might happen too, which is completely realistic.
Yeah, things come up.
We're going to have to be reactive at some point because it's life, and it's just how it goes. But to try to be a little bit proactive about those conversations. And another thing that you mentioned, I just went back to a story. You were talking about the pressure of that countdown clock again. And there will be a natural tendency to feel it as your kids get older. Like you've kind of alluded to it a few times. But as a leader, I even remember I've taken several groups from ninth grade through 12th grade and into the college years and kind of cycled back around. With one of my earlier groups when I was following them through, I just remember standing with them in worship one night, and it was their senior year, and looking around at them, and it just hit me how little time we had left as a group. And that in just a few short weeks, these girls were going to be on college campuses, or they were going to be in jobs, but we weren't going to be meeting together again. And the intensity of that feeling was so strong. I can only imagine what a parent feels, because it's got to be magnified by 1,000,000 times. But in that moment, I sat down and I just wrote a list for our group. And it was almost it was almost like a regrets list, if I'm honest, of things that I wish I had already done. But that I went, I want to make sure our group does this before they leave. And it was like all of a sudden I felt the pressure to be intentional more than I'd ever felt it. Because I'd just been cruising along. It was like, yeah, we're just leading group. We're just showing up on Sunday. We're just going to the events. We're doing the thing. If we feel like having an outing, we'll do it. But all of a sudden in that moment with them as seniors, it was like, okay, I'm going to write down the things that have to be happening, because this window is so small. And I want to make sure they have a missions experience. I mean, that was one of them. I just want to make sure that they experience serving in a different kind of way together before they're out there. I want to do something together with their families, was another one. I mean, there were things that I wrote down in that moment. It was just like, here's what I'm going to be committed to do. I'm going to put it on the calendar because it's such a short window.
Yeah, that's powerful. So it is hard, no doubt. Like you said, it's hard, but it's worth it because you do get more intentional. Now, you guys have created resources, and you continue to create them for Phase to equip leaders, to equip parents. And I just want to hit some of that as a quick overview, and then even jump into like how you're seeing churches use it, right?
Okay.
And really share it. So you have phase cards for like just a simple, quick information about each phase, right? So it might be,
Right.
ninth grade, and it talks about, it's like a line about that with some information. And then you have I don't know what to call it, but the mini booklet for each phase. I forget what you call it.
We call it a phase summary, but it's okay.
That's a good name.
That's been right.
Yeah. And those are helpful. Can you describe that?
Yeah. So it's everything about that phase in as few words as possible. And I'm biased to the summaries. I love them. We've defined every phase in a nutshell. So, for example, with a 3 and 4-year-old, we said it's the phase when anything can be imagined, everything can be a game, and one curious preschooler wants to know why.
Yeah.
In fact, every definition ends with kind of a phrase that kid might be saying a lot in your home, if that makes sense. So 1 and 2-year-olds, we said, is the phase when nobody's on time, everything's a mess, and one eager toddler will insist, I can do it. And so these summaries.
That phase came out when our son was in that phase, and he had a phrase. He would say, I do it by myself, Smee.
Yep.
And
He did it myself.
Yeah, it was. I do it by myself, Smee, which was so frustrating at times because it's like, no, buddy, I will help you get your shirt on. I do it by myself, Smee. Like, okay, and you get the, reading the face thing. It's like, well, this makes sense. I mean, like, okay, clearly this is normal. I need to try to not squelch this.
Usually with lots of anger behind it, of like,
yes.
I will do it. You're looking at him going, there's no way.
Yeah. Or yes, there's a way, but I don't have 5 minutes to put on a shirt.
Right. That was that first part about why everybody's late. Because it's like, I have friends sometimes where I just wait for their kids to get to be that old.
Oh, yeah.
You're going to understand it in a different way.
And then get multiple. So it just compounds.
Yeah.
Like, okay, now we're all in trouble. Like everybody, can't get ready. That's awesome. And those are great. You have them for those are already out for every phase, correct?
Yes. So every phase has that definition, and then it kind of expands on that definition to explain just in a nutshell what this phase is like. Part of that just comes back to there is a baseline in a sense that I think church leaders and educators begin to feel because they work with large groups of kids in a phase that sometimes parents don't get because you're just watching one kid grow up. And so trying to tell for parents, okay, it's really pretty typical for this to be happening in your home at this point, if that makes sense. So kind of that, like you were talking about with your son, I can do it myself to say, you know what? Most parents, most kids in this phase are doing that, saying that. And so, welcome to having a 1 and 2 year olds. That's what it's going to be like.
Yeah, and you can like reinforce the positive in it. Like I remember thinking, okay, I need to reframe it here. Sometimes we were in a hurry, and I just really needed him to, to get ready. But more often than not, I needed to try to create the margin to where, like, you know what, I can help you do it by yourself, me, in his words. And then he would learn. It was amazing. Actually, what was great about it was he could do so many things that I don't know. Maybe some of it was because he was our first and been around kids forever, but you don't know exactly what their potential is. And then you see it and you're like, wow, that's pretty awesome. Some of the things he could do, but he wouldn't have been able to do them without lots of frustration and attempts, on the front end, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And it is that positive view of it to say, that was another part of the educator game that I loved, was when you talk to teachers who've been committed to an age for a long time, the best thing is sitting in a room with someone who's taught third grade for 35 years. I mean, you listen to their stories, they will tell you why their grade is the best grade on the planet. And there's middle school teachers out there that are going, you know what? 7th graders, that's the best years. And I love 7th graders. And they'll unpack for you all the reasons they love 7th graders. And so we wanted to capture that, in essence, for parents as well, to say, okay, yeah, it comes with its own quirks. Yes, things are changing and there's nuances. There's going to be frustrations. Here's what some of those frustrations might be. But at the same time, understand this incredible potential that comes with this unique phase. Because again, that's kind of why we define phase as a time frame in a kid's life where there's distinctive opportunities. Because it's distinctive opportunities that come with every phase that you can leverage to influence their future if you see them. And if you say, like you said with your 1 and 2 year old, that I can do this, you go, okay, as frustrating as it is, as much as none of us have the patience for it, I definitely don't. I'm sitting there going, I can't wait 10 minutes for you to try to buckle when I know you can't buckle. But there's those moments to go, okay, they're building confidence. And it's a kind of confidence that will be deep rooted and help them know in life that they can take risks, that they have ability to do something big. And so when I'm able to do it, I want to step back and let them fail and push through and develop perseverance and kind of look at this through a different lens. And so it's looking for those opportunities in the phase and knowing where those windows are.
Yeah, and I probably should have mentioned this early on too, but you have the phase summaries and those cards, but you also have It's Just a Phase book that you and Reggie co-authored, which is great for parents and leaders to read through, to get, especially church leaders, I would say, because you're trying to, figure out how to make it work for all phases. So it's really good to read through that book. So you have that. And then this year you came out with another book, Don't Miss It, Parent Like Every Week Counts. Yes. Like you're saying, does every week exactly count the same? Well, no, I guess it depends on what happens. But that book's about, parenting like every week counts, right?
Right. Yes. So it sets up the idea of phase for, I think, a parent with a kid in any, at any age, just to say, don't miss it. Don't miss this. And it's a very, very, very short book that any parent can read. And in fact, you could read it in like maybe 30 minutes. But then on the right side of the page, we kind of summarized it in a visual illustration. So you can flip through those and cover the whole material in about 5 minutes.
Nice. That's great.
Yeah.
Well done. Okay, well, and and phase is not, I don't think phase, It's Just a Phase is that long either. But it's certainly longer.
It's very visual.
Yeah, very visual. Yeah, so that was an easy read as well. But I think most parents and leaders will just consume it too. It's just great. You know what I mean? I think that's part of the magic of the Phase Project. It's not that you went out and did years of research. You collected and curated and, took what was already out there from all different sources and made it simple, clear, helpful.
Right.
I mean, I think to me, that's the magic of it. Because now I can't do all that. I could never do that, especially each phase at a time. But you do it, and then I can get it's not for dummies, but I'll call it for dummies for me in a way that I understand it. And it's the most important things.
We like to oversimplify.
Yes, that's good. Well, that's
and
good.
If I was to say what the downside of phase that we all know and we all see is it is an oversimplification. So at any phase, as a leader, as a parent, you can look at it and go, well, there's exceptions to that. Of course, there's exceptions to that. Kids are people. They're unique. They're going to be different. And that's what makes it wonderful. So this is not really an exercise in going, what are the uniquenesses and the differences of every kid? And those fascinating things that you'll go, this individual is distinctive in a whole different way. Phase is just trying to create a general way to say, it's okay to know that some things are normal. And here are some potentially distinctive opportunities that you don't want to miss about this phase. And if you treat your middle schooler, or if you approach middle school ministry without understanding middle school, and you engage them the same way that you would engage an elementary school kid, you're going to miss it. And the same way, if you were to approach middle school in the same way you would approach a high schooler, you're going to miss it, because there's something distinctive about middle school years that if you understand that, you engage them in a different way, you meet their felt need, their root need, and you're really setting them up for the future when you understand their phase.
Yeah, and the other resource, and there's more to it as well. I mean, you have Just a Phase kit for church leaders, which is great. But the other thing I definitely want to mention is the phase books. So like you're writing books for each phase that are longer. So you have the summary, but then you have books for each one, and some are out now and some will be out later. But like to the one we were talking about, you have the one for 1 and 2, and it's parenting through the I Can Do It phase.
That's right. So, yep.
So what are those? Tell us about those, and then even maybe, who knows exactly? I don't want to hold you to a timeline, but you have a plan for when they'll be written. But right now, they're just getting written one at a time, right?
They're getting written one at a time, which
I don't know how else you do it. You don't want to work on 5 at a time, so one at a time makes sense, right? But they're longer, a lot more involved.
They are. It's written directly to parents, and there's 4 sections of those books. The first section walks through the 6 ways that your kid is changing in this phase. So how are they changing mentally, physically, emotionally, relationally, culturally? Morally.
Morally.
Yep. Emotionally, morally.
Mentally.
So those 6
changes. I think you got them all. Yeah.
I think I got them all. I got turned around in there somewhere, but there's 6 changes happening. Again, starting to build empathy, starting to go, hey, there's fascinating things that when you understand them, it just changes the way you respond to their behavior. The next section is where we take the 6 things we've said every kid needs over time, which are, we say over time, every kid at every phase needs, for example, love. And they need love because it will give them a sense of worth. Every kid at every phase needs words that will give them a better direction. Every kid at every phase needs stories to help them have a perspective on the world and on life. Every kid at every phase needs fun to give connection, because when we have fun and when we play together, we feel more connected. Every kid at every phase needs work, because work will give them a sense of purpose. When you understand how to work and how you can be used, it gives you purpose in a different way. Every kid at every phase needs tribes, is our way of saying community and relationships. And so we take those 6 things that every kid needs and talk about how you can give them those things in the particular phase. So in those books, for example, it would be, if every kid at every phase needs stories, we break that down really practically to say that means that they need family stories. So talk about your own family together. Every kid needs cultural stories. We actually have book lists of here's books that you could read at this phase, or movies that you can watch at this phase that will give them some cultural stories to shape their narrative and give you a way to have conversations about it. And every kid needs Bible stories. And we talk about what kind of Bible stories or how you present those Bible stories to meet that phase where they are. So kind of goes into that section of the book. The next section of the book is about celebrations that happen at every phase. So the way you celebrate Christmas with your 3-year-old looks different than the way you're going to celebrate Christmas with your 7-year-old, and it looks different than the way you're going to celebrate Christmas with your 15-year-old. So we break down what those holidays look like, what the potentials are for your celebrations, milestones that they'll hit during this phase. So it's their celebration section. The last part of it is how to navigate those critical issues like we were talking about: sexuality, technology, faith, and we've added health and that conversation with the pediatricians that I was mentioning. So those critical issues. And then there's a bit in the back as well about crisis, which really is kind of an anomaly in all of this because it's not a predictable phase kind of element, but the way that you identify and respond to crisis kind of changes throughout the phases. So just a way to say, hey, here's how you could identify a crisis in your preschooler. Here's how you could identify a crisis that your elementary schooler may have encountered. And here's a couple of ways you could be a first responder to that crisis. Of course, pointing any parent or any volunteer, on how to get help beyond themselves as well.
Yeah, I love how practical it is because, that's what you want as parents is tell me what I can do, to leverage what is true about this phase. And even the, I think you guys have, I'll link to it in the show notes, but you created a movie list for each phase, and it's posted on the it'sjustaphase.com, either there or on the Parent Q website, which is great. So like during the summers, you're watching movies with your kids, you can pick movies out of there and, watch them, which is great. So that's a great resource, and I'll link to that. So I love how practical it is. And for church leaders, I know for us, we've ever since it kind of was announced and talked about, the thing that we've talked about is how do we integrate phase? Because the obvious thing is let's get this in the hands of parents, right? And even leaders, like even small, because all our small group leaders we have small group leaders from age 3, kids are age 3 years all through high school. That would help them too. But even more than that, how do we integrate phase into our ministry, children's ministry and student ministry, and how we partner with parents? And you've got to see, you guys are talking about that because you're always asking, how can I help leaders more? How can we help churches more?
Right.
But you've seen some churches do it. So what are some things that you've seen churches do, related to phase and kind of integrating it, or ways that people are using it, even though it's still kind of in development with the resources?
Sure. So this last year, or ever since we came out with the leader book, we've had a number of leaders do some kickoff events for their parents. I would say a lot of times around a promotion weekend or back to school or the beginning of the fall, where they want to do something to bring in the community. One of the leaders out that we're in connection with, Cindy Fiala. I'm sure you know Cindy.
Yeah, she's actually she was on the podcast already, and when we're recording it, it just posted. Now we always record weeks in advance. Yeah, funny, small world, but yeah.
That is great. She's at Preston Trail, and they did this great experience in the fall this past year that they called Back to School Weekend. And the way that they marketed that to their community was just brilliant. But they had a huge influx of people who don't go to their church that weekend. I think because they positioned it as back to school, they positioned it as, we want to help you get your kids ready for the school year. Come to us this weekend and we'll do something to set you up to win this year with your kid. They tapped into a felt need for parents in their community. And so they had a lot of parents coming in to experience that. And, we've put different colors with the different phases. And of course, we do things with intentionality. So there was kind of a pattern to the year that went with it in our mind of going, preschool is kind of the spring season, so it's got a green color. And then elementary school is kind of like the summer, so it's got the yellow color to it. Middle school is kind of the fall and the changing, and so it's got a red color to it. And high school then is almost like, the winter is the goodbye season. We're kind of pushing them out into the world, and it's the blue color. But so they had these huge balloon columns out in front of their church with the 4 phase colors, and they had ball pits, and they had all this experience out in the parking lot where anybody driving past their church could see it. And then as people were coming in, they were seeing these phase definitions to say, here's what it's like in preschool. And so they had some of these phrases that you would see in the books or on the summaries in prominent places. As families are coming in, they see what it's like for them. And of course, kind of one of the whole goals in a phase is for a parent to look at it and resonate and say, yep, that's me. That's my family. That's right where we are. And it gives them a sense of, me, you get it, and I think as parents were coming through their doors, there was a whole experience from parking lot into their front entrance, into the building. And then they had each one of their age group ministers play a part in the service. So they had an element from their preschool director, from their children's pastor, middle school, high school. They had kids on the stage leading worship and songs. So everybody in their whole church community was able to see the value of kids and teenagers, I think, in a different way. And then their senior pastor gave a message about phases, about how time is running out and how it's limited, and this, leveraging this distinctive opportunity. And they were able to say, as a church, we know that your kid is growing and changing, and we want to be here with you to meet their needs in this phase. And they had the phase summaries. So as parents are walking out, there was, I believe that this is all true. You have to check with Cindy, but I've seen some pictures, kind of a wall where parents could walk up and get the summaries or say, this is my, my age group or my kid. Sometimes I blend stories. So that's why I had a moment where I thought, I'm pretty sure that was a picture from Cindy's church I saw. If it wasn't, it was another church.
Probably. I'd be surprised if she didn't do that.
There are a lot of churches that have kind of done similar things. I know at Lake Point Church, Reggie and I went out there earlier this year. They had a parent night where they brought all their parents in on a Saturday night to talk about phase. And then for them, they attached it to a leader training the next morning. So it was it was a Friday night. So Friday night for parents to talk about phase. And then the next morning to go deeper with their volunteers to say, okay, now as church leaders, how are we going to be experts in the phase so that when we partner with parents, we really help them in these phases? There have been a number of churches that kind of done something along those lines as well, training their volunteer base.
Yeah, I think the easy thing we did right away, like you mentioned, was integrated into transition events. If you're already doing, a class or a thing for incoming kindergartners or baby dedication, or like we do something for student ministry, it was easy just to get the phase content, the summaries, all that, bring it in and put it there. We were talking before we recorded that we do a class for like parenting the early years, and it was easy just to get phase content that's already out and just integrate it in that class. But the thing I know we're doing, and we've talked about outside of here, is just trying to figure out what is, like, if we could draw it up from scratch, what is the plan? Because we want to do a kickoff event, that's what I call it, like you've talked about with Cindy and Lake Point, and those are great. And I love how they're doing them differently too, right? Because Cindy's was like Sunday morning, basically it took over the service. Yeah, and then Lake Point did Friday night. Other people were doing like Saturday morning and doing workshops, like, hear about phase overall and then go to the elementary breakout, which I think is great. That's awesome too. But what are some unique ways or some new ways you're seeing it integrated even beyond that? Like with classes.
So one of the
groups?
Interesting, on a personal note, one of the interesting things that happened this last year is my sister's leading a small group, and she took over she has a 9th grade group this year. And about halfway through the year, she called me up and she's like, yeah, I'm going to need you to meet with my parents because they're freaking out.
That's funny.
So I was going, okay, tell me a little bit more about it. And she said, they're calling, they're emailing, they're saying, I don't know what to do. My child's not who I thought she was. She's not hanging out with her friends anymore. She's got different friends. Everything's changing. And so the more she talked, the more I'm thinking, okay, yeah, this is the 9th grade. But so what we did in that particular instance is we invited all of the parents of her 9th graders over to her house. And it was really casual. It was like, finger food and hang out at the house and just come and let's talk together. And the interesting thing is, I was coming with some of this phase material, the summaries, some of those ideas. At the same time, very open-handed to say, I haven't parented a high schooler, so I am not an expert on parenting high schoolers. That part can be awkward to say, look, like I definitely don't know a thing about this. I haven't done it.
That's when you're the expert, when you actually haven't done it. You know what I mean? And you realize, because once you've done it, as people tell us, because I haven't done it either, nobody's an expert. You know what I mean? You learn there's no such thing. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I've led groups long enough to, when I was first starting out, I probably would have told you I was an expert on teenagers because
that's how it works.
I taught teenagers, I led teenagers in small groups, and I thought, I know how to engage them and interact with them. And, if these crazy parents would just do what I do, they would have a better relationship with their kid, because look at how it works for me. And
because I'm not the authority figure, but that doesn't matter.
Right.
Yeah.
I think when you're starting out in groups, you kind of have that, or I did, that was the mistake I made. And looking back on it now, it's just so much more clear to go, you know what? It is so different for a parent of a teenager when they are the parent and you think, the stakes are so much higher. They are slamming the doors in their home. They're wrecking their car. It's their bank account that's at stake. If they don't get their future off the ground, they're going to move back into their home. I mean, it's just a different ball game, let alone the fact that it's just a different relationship. Like you said, I mean, a kid can tell me a story as a small group leader or as a church leader without risk of being grounded, without the risk of being, kicked out of the house or whatever it is. So
yeah,
it's just a whole different dynamic. But we gathered these parents together to say, here's a couple of things about ninth grade that tend to be true. And I think, as a church leader, the more you can lean into parents who have parented, that's probably wise. I think that's kind of why I was bringing that up. The more you can lean in or at least be authentic about, experience versus non-experience. But we were able to set up a few of those phase principles. But the real win of that particular scenario was having the parents with kids in the same small group meet each other and meet their small group leader, because there were some conversations happening in that room that were just incredible. Now, this is a ministry that's very, I would say, unchurch friendly. So there's a lot of kids coming into this youth group that are not, their parents are not in church, or they're not really aware and not very connected to the ministry. So some of the conversations were just fascinating. Everything from, they didn't really know what this group was about. They didn't really know what the church was about. They had reservations about their kids coming, but the parents were able to ask some of those questions and feel more comfortable about the purpose of the group, what's happening with their daughter, how this is a partnership with them. I think parents walked away not only with just a little bit better sense of ninth grade, because I think we were there able to say, we're in your court and we understand something about ninth grade and we want to be in this together with you, but even about their understanding about the church and what this small group could help them accomplish over the next 4 years in their daughter's life.
Yeah, and that's something. There's a bunch of things I love about it. One, I don't want people to miss that your sister was connected to the parents enough to know that they were going crazy. I'm saying going crazy, but they were panicking, right. And that alone is important. Because how many small group leaders, whether it's student ministry or children's ministry, don't know their kids' parents. Right. Could never tell you how they feel. That's awesome. Right. And that's kudos to her for being a great small group leader. And what I love about this example too is because we do things to get parents and small group leaders together. We had Elle Campbell, the first podcast we ever recorded was with Elle Campbell, who works with you. And we talked about that awesome parent small group leader breakfast kit, that her and Kenny made. And so we've done that too. But what I love about this is it's very organic. It's not an event. It's very easy to put together because if you do small groups, or at least some version where you have kids and students grouped by age, you already have the little group there. You just get the parents together. You could buy the phase summaries. A church leader could get the phase summaries and then have their small group leaders host this kind of conversation with very little cost, very little planning. You could even just test it with a group. So I love that. That's really helpful. And something you said before we recorded, I think shows up here too, and that's that you're trying to help parents be present with their kids, at home and in that situation, and have community with each other. And this was a great one that builds the community with each other, which is good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Is there anything else as we get ready to wrap up? Anything else that's you think about that's people are doing that's great or exciting, or anything that's in the future that you all are working on related to phase that you're excited about?
Over the next year, we're really trying to learn from church leaders how they're leveraging phase and put together an annual strategy that reevaluates everything that we do for parents. Just like you said, for those two goals to be true, to help every parent be more present in the home and help every parent be connected in a faith community. And so if we look through at the year through that lens, we're exploring what happens in the fall, what happens in the winter, what happens in the spring, what happens in the summer. how do we put together the rhythm of the year so that we can launch those kickoff events in a really practical way. Orange 17, we're going to have the phase event kit where, it will give you everything you need to create that event moment, back to school moment.
Oh, that's good.
But so if you do that though, then what is that next step? Because a lot of leaders would say, what is it then? What is the next step? Say you get outside parents coming to something like that. How do you connect them into that faith community? And so part of the answers, it may be multifaceted. These small groups to help draw some parents in, because we believe that parents are drawn into something like that because they know that the leader has something in common with them, and it isn't your ministry, it's their kid. And so they're going to show up for somebody who's showing up for their kid in a different way. And it may be some classes where you go, okay, now we have this 4-week class, so you can meet other parents who are in your phase and go through this material that will just help you be a better parent in the phase that you're in. And the great thing about that is, I think, then it's annual. It becomes a part of the natural rhythm of the year that you go, okay, I need to rediscover this again because my kid's in a new phase. I need that same information in a new way at every phase of my kid's life.
Yeah, we can't give them, I don't know, 15, 12. I don't know how many phases are there? 13?
13.
13. You can't give them 13 phase summaries or 13 phase
That's
books.
right.
Like, you're good.
Yeah.
See you later. No parent would remember that. Plus, hopefully our churches are reaching new people, right? So every year there's new people coming in who weren't there for the kickoff and need help. And there's something throughout the year to help them too. That's good. We've been thinking about that. So I'm glad you all are. So we can just stop thinking about it. And when you're done and you've got the plan, we'll just take it and we'll just implement it. That'll be really good. Well, I love, obviously, Orange and everything you all do. And I think my favorite part about Orange is, outside of just the people and just you all and the relationships and how awesome you are, is the innovation. Just how you always working to make things better and figure out what's next and how to help, leaders and parents. And phases is a really good byproduct of that. And it's still in development. I know it probably has expanded from whatever you thought it was originally, because it seems like it grows every year.
Oh, yeah.
But that's good.
Yep.
That's good, because I think you've realized you've tapped into something really powerful and a big, big felt need. And so that's why it's grown. That's really helpful. Well, how could people connect with you if they want to, ask a question or get more information? We'll put a lot of links in the show notes because there's a lot to link to about Phase and the products. But is it Twitter, Instagram? Is it just the phase.com?
Oh, all of those things. I mean, you can follow me on Twitter. It's Kristen_Ivy at Twitter. If you want to just see lots of pictures of my kids, you can follow my Instagram. That tends to be what I post there.
They're cute.
Because like every mom, I think my kids are amazing. So I post a lot of them there. And then on Just a Phase blog, it's justaphase.com. If you sign up there, you'll actually get the life maps sent to you right now, which I think is a really exciting resource. I'm excited about it. Right now, it feels like an idea. I think there's a lot more that can be done practically with it. But just the ability to look at how some of these critical issues develop over multiple phases is a fun resource. So I'd encourage you to do that. And you can send any questions anytime to, there's a contact us on the Just a Phase blog. And my favorite part of Phase has been, just like you were saying, just the national conversation around it, getting to talk to leaders, hear the questions, hear the stories about it. I'm constantly now getting great new resources from leaders that will send them our direction. So please engage in that conversation. Send your questions. We would love to hear from you.
That's great. Well, Kristen, this has been really, really helpful. Thank you so much. And we really look forward to what's ahead and all the other stuff that's in the works that you're developing. So thanks.
All right. Thanks, Nick.
There you have it. I love the Phase project so far. We have gotten all the resources, continue to use them already in our kind of milestone and transition events. And just, we look forward to each new resource that comes out. I think it can be one of the biggest, most impactful things for the church, and especially for those of us who are serving families and kids and students, because of how helpful it is to parents and how helpful it is to leaders as well. So like we talked about there, you can get some of those resources. Go to justaphase.com and sign up and get the phase maps, which are a great overview of a lot of that research. And I know they continue to do research, which is great because they'll continue to put out other maps and things like that. So here's some other action items. I think one, you can go to justaphase.com and sign up there to get those maps. You can get the show notes at nickblevins.com/episode 10. Another thing you could do is to plan a meeting with your team and kind of spec out what would be the overall strategy to share phase with your parents. So kind of like we talked about, you can have one event or something to roll it out, but what is the year after year plan to continue getting that in front of parents? And even if it weren't phase, if it were just other resources to help parents and to help connect them with your church and partner with them and make sure you're on the same page, what is the plan to do that, right? And not just one time, but yearly or monthly. I mean, you have new people coming in all the time. I don't think the answer is do something every month, or I don't even know if it's do something every quarter, but what is that plan so that you can continue to get that in front of parents and welcome new parents as well? Another action step would be for parents. If those of us who have kids, I totally encourage you to grab the phase summaries for your kids' phase and read them. And especially coming up in a new school year here soon, it's great to get the next one, right, and prepare rather than kind of figuring it out later. Read up on that, see what that looks like for your children. And if you have an infant or a toddler, the phase books are out for that age too. So you could grab those books and read those. In the next episode of the Family Ministry Podcast, I talk with Matt Guevara, the Executive Director of the International Network of Children's Ministry. So if you serve in children's ministry, you're probably familiar with the Children's Pastors Conference. It's been around for a long, long time. Lots of leaders go to that every year. And so Matt and I talk, and we don't talk a whole lot about the conference. We actually talk about the top priority that we have as leaders that we neglect far too often. So you don't want to miss it. Make sure you hit subscribe, and we'll see you in the next episode of the Family Ministry Podcast.
Thanks for listening to the Nick Blevins Family Ministry Podcast. We hope this helps you maximize your church's potential. We would love to hear stories of how you apply what you've learned. You can do that by leaving a comment on iTunes or in the show notes at nickblevins.com.